Hello and welcome again to Raven Insight, a place where we all come together to talk about the journey to higher spiritual consciousness. I'm Lyons, I'm your host. I'm a tech guy gone mystic, here to go through the journey myself, share my experiences with you, share my philosophy with you, and have a nice place where we can all come together and think about these things as we all progress through this life together. So, without further ado, let's talk about today's topic. And today I would like to talk about the topic of energy. Now, energy is a very broad topic and it can cover a lot of areas. So I'm going to try to narrow this down into a broad level philosophically on how I see nature's role in the nature of the universe, as well as some examples of how it can come into play in our lives. Review a little bit about how even as you go through the spiritual journey, you're going to be very impacted by energy all the time. It's never going to go away. And how so much of the spiritual journey is really, and when we talk about aligning yourself, right? And to review, we've talked about reinvestigating and reincorporating that shadow self into you, right? So we're going to bring that part of you in, and we're going to reconnect the rational self with the emotive self, and in that there's a fusion of energy, right? And depending on how that energy is going to express itself, it could come out in motivation, it could come out in procrastination, and a whole bunch of other things. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But let's just talk about energy at a very high level in the universe, because I don't have all the answers. I claim to be enlightened to a degree. I claim to have gone down many a spiritual path, but I don't claim to know everything. So even the true nature of the universe is something that we all seek to understand, but we can never fully understand it ourselves. If one really gives into the true concept of the spiritual journey and sees themselves connected as the divine and the conscious part of the universe experiencing itself, as Alan Watts would say, we are the universe experiencing itself. In some regards, even the universe and the divine doesn't know what it is. So asking what it is sort of a tricky question, right? And so what does this have to do with energy? Well, depending on how you look at energy, it could define the entire nature of what we understand to be reality. I've said it before, really, everything is energy. Everything is energy. Everything's energy. And Einstein, his theory of relativity equals mc squared, right? He showed the relationship between energy and mass. You know, he's got the speed of light in there as the factor to make the change, and the math is physics beyond me. Okay. But what you have to understand is that there's a relationship between mass and energy, and it never goes away. You can't ever fully destroy something. It never ever goes away. It can only change state. Mass can become energy, energy can become mass, and that's it. That's the nature of the universe. So now, even that's, we're starting to get into loaded questions, right? In Einstein's theory of relativity, where I just pulled that equation from, he's assuming, for instance, a finite universe, that the universe is expanding, but there's a finite amount of stuff in the universe, right? We're like this big expanding ball that's been expanding ever since the Big Bang, but all the energy and or matter that was in the universe ever was always here. It's just changing states. So, to pause for a second, understanding energy in that regard and accepting Einstein's equation, therefore, assumes a finite universe. So there's a huge assumption there, because the universe might be finite, it might be infinite. If it's infinite, we run into some problems, because in a truly infinite universe, that means that anything and everything that has possibly happened has happened and will continue to happen several times over in several variations. So you've lived a million times, and everything's been the same except I was wearing a green shirt for this video in one universe. You know what I mean? That's what true infinity means. So maybe we're infinite, but that would be opening up a whole other can of worms. So I'm, for the simplicity of this, going to just assume that we are expanding. What are we expanding into? It's another good question. It's probably nothingness. Maybe there's a huge nothingness into which universes come into creation and they bump into each other like soap bubbles in a tub. Who knows? I would argue it doesn't really matter, because anything outside of the bounds of our universe, I mean, it doesn't really impact us. And we know energy is very active. If you look at an atom, it's the electrons going around the protons, and the nucleus. Most of everything, even famous table here, is hard, but it's mostly nothing. There's mostly nothing there. And what makes that hard? Electrons going around a nucleus, and that resistance giving enough strength that electrical force creates the hardness enough that we have table, So if you dig deeper at the quantum level, it gets even weird, because like I've talked about before, a lot of quantum involves spin, up, down, left, right, does all these different things. And so you have spin of these subatomic particles, but again, those are just energy. So everything in the universe is energy. Everything is energy. I liken it to a cup of ice water at 32 degrees temperature, right? Some of that ice is becoming water, some of that water is becoming ice, but there's always this change. So energy is fundamental. Even when we're dealing with mass and matter, it's all essentially energy. We're all just a pool of energy, okay? And I just talked about the universe from a very rational concept of Einstein-based theory of relativity-based physics, which is still, it's based in Newtonian physics, and it's very much here in the world. The mass there, universe finite, okay. But we're still dealing with energy. And now I'm going to go back to that quantum level and that spin. It can go up, it can go down, it can go left, it can go right. What's really interesting about that, for someone who's done like computer stuff, computers run on binary. Despite everything you see on the internet, the videos, the games, everything, the words, the text, everything, it's all just zeros and ones. It's all just ons and offs. Like you have 2 data points. It's either on or it's off. Everything in software development is essentially on or off. Yes or no, and a lot of ifs. If this happens, then do this. If that happens, then do that. If none of those happen, then do this other thing. That's it. So much of everything we do in computers is binary. So much of what we do in our lives are binary, right? Go down this, take a left, take a right. So you're often confined to only so many choices. I only bring this up because quantum spin is interesting in that it could very much work like binary, but instead of a 0 or a 1, having an up, down, and a left and a right, that actually gives you 4 positions instead of 2, which from a developer's standpoint would allow you to hold a lot more data efficiently within a system. Okay. And your point, Ben? Your point, Lions? My point is that it could very well be like the underlying fabric of reality. Could operate in sort of like a binary code, but it'd be a base 4 logarithmic mathematical code, right? But just like binary makes everything on the computer, quanta and all these different states can make all of reality. And as we talked about in the previous videos, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, as Schrodinger's cat example explained, you have these multiple states in which the probability of state A and state B are completely equal until they're observed, at which point they lock into reality. And I said that was just like a video game rendering what you see. This is why, sort of at the quantum level, the simulation argument of reality makes sense. And for those who are not familiar with the concept of the simulation, right, it's like the Matrix or something like that. But the idea is, if you were in a computer simulation that was real enough, you wouldn't know. Okay? In the 70s, and we had Pong. In the early 80s, we had Nintendo. Now we have these deep, rich, interactive, immersive environments, 3D, and everything looks real. Very good graphics, very interactive gameplay. And if that can happen in 30 years, what would happen in 1,000, right? So we could make very realistic simulations, almost indistinguishable from the real world. And it's not like a guy is going to make a simulation. Thousands of people are running simulations for different ideas, right? So the idea is that there was one real first civilization. They built the first simulation, and at that simulation, the people in it got so advanced that they built a simulation. And then in that simulation, the people got so advanced they built simulations. And not only that, but billions of simulations. So if we are truly the only life in all of the universe, in all of the infinite universe, we believe the Bible and God only made humans to have dominion over the entire universe, right? I mean, we have trillions and trillions and trillions of planets out there. We haven't even found them all yet, right? So that would make your odds of existing 1 in trillions, 1 in infinity, right? Highly improbable. But if they're running billions and billions and billions of simulations, well, then your odds of being in a simulation are less than infinity to 1. All right? I mean, it could be 20, 30, 40, 50%. So the odds that we live in a simulation mathematically seem to imply that we are in one, but we believe we are in the real world. That's why, like, when I talk about spirituality, I don't have all the answers yet. And I really look at things through analogy and metaphor, and I try to understand ancient religions and cultures, but I also marry it with modern scientific concepts and see what still jives. I mean, the more they study quantum mechanics, the more Buddhism proves to be right in a lot of ways. I find a lot of arrogance in people. It's funny. People are funny. We're in an era where there's two people. There's only two kinds of people. There's the people who read the Bible, swear by it. It's exactly as it is. Jesus wrote it himself, word for word, exactly the word of God. Perfect. Obey it. 6,000 years ago, they came up with the 10 Commandments, but I just got a new iPhone 2 years ago, but I gotta make sure my religion's the old kind. 6,000 years, you know? And so you have people who adhere to it religiously, and then you have people who, you know, are more scientific, atheistic, agnostic, who just discount it completely. And like, both approaches aren't great. I mean, in the Bible there is historical stuff worth gleaning, and you know, there is stuff we're figuring out. There are places, there are events. So if you just reading as a historical record, it's not perfect, but there's stuff in there that's going to point you in the right directions. Just like they didn't think Troy was a real place and that the Iliad was not a real story until a German guy showed up there in the 1800s and said it was here all the time, you know. So it can be interesting, but then you have the other side that's like, nah, that was just done by a bunch of dumb goat herders. They don't know what they're talking about. But people like to read words, but they don't like to think about what they mean. They don't like to put thought into them. They don't like to extrapolate. They don't like to use analogy and metaphor. So I find it very interesting when very old religious traditions work in modern scientific things. And maybe not for the reasons why, but for whatever they still do. I go into all this because nature, whether it's a real finite universe, real in the this is table sense, and this is the only one, and God made us, and this is it, and this is here, and this is real, and real. Be it that, or be it everything is a simulation, and everything is just imaginary data that we're stuck in because we're a piece of data. And, you know, I really actually like the simulation analogy because I personally see my relationship with God like this. God is the program. He is the simulation. God is the person who wrote the simulation and is running the simulation and is the main program in the simulation. We are like subroutines of that program, going about our lives, experiencing stuff, independent. So the controlling part of the program within the program that is the program, I know, this is God. This is why it's so weird. So you have the being outside of it, who is it, okay? Go with me on this one. And is also a routine in it, but then we are the subroutines. And by a contract with itself, it said, I'm only gonna have limited action with these subroutines because I need each one of these to go out and experience what the rest of me is like without me getting in the way. And so then when you die, your job basically is to go back up, be reincorporated into the main database, the main processing system, and to like basically output what you learned on this go around. You can then sit in a basic run state, hanging out with the main program for a while, and when you're ready to go, it sends you back down. So that's reincarnation. Like, there's the reincarnation cycle. There's the near-death experience stuff that people are all talking about. Like, we're here to experience the universe. We report it back upon death, and then we choose whether we come back or not. Right? And I know you're sitting here going, wow, man, that sounds wacky. That sounds odd. Like, you're the thing outside of the thing, but you are the thing and separate from... Are you even listening to yourself? Yeah, you know who else said that? Odin. Right? And now all of you are like, well, I was out of left field. Well, you see all the ravens on my thing, and I told you I like Odin, right? I haven't really banged on with my paganist angles yet. I'm really trying the straightforward spirituality angle before I talk about any of that weirdness. But again, I'm one who believes in metaphor and analogy. And Odin, right, famously lost his eye in order to gain enough wisdom to be able to read the runes. The runes being like letters, essentially, which allowed, you know, for him, they were magic, they were spells, etc. But the runes are very important because they allowed us to write words. And once you can write words, you can communicate with each other, you can capture knowledge. So I find it interesting that Odin had to be pinned to Yggdrasil to read the runes, just like Prometheus had to be chained to a rock and have his heart eaten out by vultures for teaching man fire. Just like Lucifer got in trouble for giving the apple to Adam and Eve. So there's always, in so many major religions, a God character who does something to give man information and then has to pay some price in it. But the reason why I like the Odin one specifically, and to my example of God in the simulation context, is because he says in the Prosaic Eddas that in order to get the runes, he had to spear himself to Yggdrasil. He had to hang himself, and then he had to spear himself. He also lost an eye in order to read the runes. But the phrase that he used, which I find very interesting, is, I had to spear myself to learn of myself. I had to spear myself to myself in order to learn of myself. So you see what I mean? The simulation, if God is the simulation and a thing in it, I had to spear myself to myself, right? I had to spear this aspect of me to that aspect of me in order to learn of me, right? And that's why I say it's strange that sometimes these old religious concepts, when you go far enough in another direction, you see they're kind of saying the same things in a very strange way. So in saying that, Odin was almost like I don't know these aspects of myself, and I'm here through pain and suffering to learn them. And what did he learn? Knowledge. All right. So energy is everywhere in the universe, and it impacts us all the time. And I've talked about in dealing with other people, like in the narcissist empath type relationships, there's always this energy battle where people who are not complete in themselves and have not done the spiritual journey and have not aligned themselves so that they're generating their own energy within, they're going to a lot of times seek it from without. And it's not always narcissistic. Sometimes it's in the form of validation, or it's in an empathetic form of serving, but because they want thanks, or because they want reward, or because they want to be said, you know, you're a good boy. Again, validation, societal acceptance. You dress a certain way, you talk a certain way, because you don't want your energies to be misaligned to reality, or you're going to get squirted out, right? So there's all these energy alignments. Every time you're dealing with other people, it's a battle of energies, all right? People want stuff out of you, or you're in love with someone, you want to give it to them, but it's always sort of this exchange of energy. And then it always comes back to the self, and then it comes back to your own energy levels, right? We've all had good days, we've all had bad days. And to bring this into this channel and this example, and how even though I'm going through the spiritual journey, I have a hard time with energy management. Friday's a perfect example. I've started this channel, I don't really have a goal in it, I'm just out here, but I want to see it through. So I want to put out content because I know it's important, if nothing else, to get something out there all the time, be consistent, not only for the YouTube algorithm, but you know, I follow reactors, I follow people like me, just small time YouTubers talking, because I like, you know, I miss them. I like the parasocial relationship. I like knowing that they're there. I like when there's nothing else to watch, I know that so-and-so's there and I can click on it and see them. So I feel like, you know, I don't really have many subscribers, don't really have many viewers. So I know I could just do nothing right now and it wouldn't really matter. But it would matter to myself, okay? So I had on Friday this battle of energy. I didn't want to do a video. I busted my butt on Thursday doing a lot of work around the house and cleaning, and I was tired. I was physically tired. The weather, the barometer was oppressive. Like, it wanted to rain. I was in arthritic pain, like sinus pressure. I did not feel good. And my mind was blank. Like, I've actually been very proud of some of the material I put out lately, so I didn't have anything rattling around in my brain to talk about. And I was still like, you gotta get out there, you gotta get out there, you gotta get out there. So what is that? That's energy, right? There's energy pulling at me. There's two energies. And one's like, don't do it, and one's do it. Okay, which one's right? Which one should I do? And this is the struggle we go through. And even as I go through the spiritual journey, in some ways it makes the struggle harder, because before I would have just stuck with motivation's a lie, discipline's the way to go, make your bed every morning, do the thing, it doesn't matter whether you want to do it or not, crap out some content. But then you think about it, and think about it from the spiritual journey angle. That's ego. That's ego saying, you need to do this to feed the YouTube algorithm or you won't get enough views or likes and stuff. That you've got to do this because you have a certain image in your mind or a certain product that you're trying to protect. You have to do this because you don't want to be lazy. You want to do this so that you are staying true to what you're doing. And so there's a lot of very valid arguments as to why I should have, but I still inside, and I'm really trying hard to like listen to my insides and go against my nature. And I am a perfectionist, and I am a doer, and I am results oriented. And so there's me trying to want to spit out a video. But then when I got into my quiet space and I'm trying to think of what to talk about, and I'm feeling that frustration, which is energy. Frustration is energy. And right now it's being caused by a misalignment, right? Of desire to do the thing and a desire not to do the thing. The desire to give self-care and rest which is one we're all struggling with, especially like if you're unemployed and you're trying to find that new job. Where do you find the permission to rest versus get it done, right? And there it is, slamming into each other. And my whole life, have had a very hard time ever coming out on the it's time to rest thing. American puritanical heritage, right? You work or you're lazy, and if you're lazy, you're a sinner. So even as you go down the spiritual journey, know that you're going to have these days where it eats at you and it pulls at you. And at the end, I didn't put one out, and the reason why is because I'm here to talk about my aligned truth. And I wasn't aligned in a good place to do that. I just wasn't. And so I just let it go. And then in that letting go was a release of pent energy. Forgiveness allows you to release energy. So whether you're forgiving yourself or forgiving somebody else, know that that's like a pressure valve. Forgiveness is a pressure valve to release energy. So what is it now that I'm kind of wanting to wrap this up? I'm kind of at time. I've rambled a little bit because I've had a little too much energy today. I would just say, know that at the end of this, you're always going to have energy. Energy's good because, like I say, it's the fundamental of the universe. It is what it is, and really you want to channel that energy within you, but you want to harness it, right? You can't have unbridled energy within you. Unbridled energy comes out in anger, yelling, crying, like aggression, whatever. That's why when people say you're stressed and you need to work out that extra energy, exercise, do some stuff to get it out of your body, right? So I wouldn't say when you're looking to spiritualism and higher consciousness and enlightenment. Again, I always joke about the guy who meditates and becomes the beam of light, that pure energy, right? But you're not going to be in that like nice blissful state of pure energy all the time. So as I was, putting together my thoughts today as to really where I wanted to land this, it's really not about energy generation. It's about alignment, really. And again, it really comes down to that term. It's that perfect balance between not so much, not so little. We self-care to get enough energy where we can be productive. We then follow what we need to do based on, where our life is driving us, where our emotive center, where our connection to divine is pushing us. And we go until the connection stops. And then we're honest with ourselves when that happens, and not want to dip into ego to keep pushing. But at that point, to be quiet and listen and go, oh, okay, what now? A lot of times when the divine works with you, it gets you so far, and then you sort of plateau and run out of gas. And it's like you've had all these battles that you fought, and that takes energy. And you fought them and you put them to bed, and you're proud of it, and that pride brings energy. But then once they're done, they're done. And then you're sort of at this place where it's nice, it's calm. It's calm. I mean, it's not great for generating content because, like, I'm calm. Like, there's nothing, like, digging into me that I'm like, this is something that would be a great thing to talk about, But that's really where we're trying to get to, is this inner peace, this placidity that allows us to be in a place of like clear mental thinking so that we can then go through and do all those other techniques, right? That I've been talking about in all the other videos. Yeah, not wasting our energy in performative pain, not spending energy in assumption, not like trying to match someone's energy in an argument, right? There's going to be a lot of embracing and accepting, a lot of forgiving, again, to release that pressure valve, and trying to maintain a nice consistent level of energy within yourself. You don't want to be too greedy and take too much of the universe's energy. You take just the right amount. Enough to keep you going, enough to keep you focused. And so if you don't have that energy, that's your time to self-care. And if you have too much of that energy, well, now it's time to activate. That now you're motivated. Now you don't need the discipline, right? Because that activation energy, burn that off through activation, be it having to burn it off just to burn it off. Like if you're mad about something, maybe you just need to exercise. But maybe if it's that work thing and you have the eureka moment, I don't care if it's 2 a.m. Do it. Just do it now. Just do a few steps. Write down the idea. Take a few steps. Get that energy out. You can bank it later, right? By writing it down, you can take that idea and all that activation energy that hit you at 2 in the morning, capture it and bank it for the morning when you're ready to deal with it, but manage it and deal with it. That's really all I got to say about energy right now. We're going to talk more about it in the context of frequencies and cycles. But you can't really understand how frequencies and, people in the spiritual environment are always talking about raising your frequency. What does that mean? Well, you can't really understand that until you understand that frequencies are cycles, and cycles are based on frequency movement, or energy movement. So you can't understand any of this until you understand energy and its fundamental energiness that's all around us, right? So when you do get to a place of higher spiritual enlightenment, a lot of people talk about going with the flow and being the leaf on the stream. That's really what you're doing, is in this energy alignment. You're trying to put yourself in the right amount of energy for the place and time that you are in at this moment in order to be able to go with the flow of the situation as it's occurring and progress forward, again, with optimum efficiency. I can't really put it a better way. Because you're not trying, because you aren't fighting, because you are in the flow, because you're embracing and flowing with the energy rather than fighting it. And again, just think about energy. And again, I'm one who talks in analogy and metaphor. So even if you don't understand it scientifically, understand it conceptually. Understand, like, when you're dealing with people, like, see the energy between you, right? Even something as stupid as stocks. Stocks is all energy. That's how money is made, right? Buy low, sell high. The movement in between is where you make the money. A lot of people hate down markets. Did you know that down markets are where people make most of their money, like the rich people, because it's a safe bet. If you're betting against the market and you're at the top and you know the market's going to go bad and you short it, you're going to make money. Well, how do you know the market's going to go bad? Well, if it's 9/11 and you shorted the entire market the first day that that bell rang, you made money. You knew something bad was going to happen. You knew everything was going to fall. It was guaranteed. All they had to do was put their marker in the right place and let the energy of the movement down make them money. Not to get too sidetracked, but I'm just trying to illustrate the point. The energy is a great metaphor to understand many things in this universe. And by doing so, you're kind of seeing behind the veil about how the entire universe works. And so whether you're stuck in an Einsteinian world of an expanding universe and theory of relativity, or whether you're willing to say, wow, maybe we are some version of a simulation, or whether you're willing to go with my analogy and say it is like a simulation, but that simulation is God. Doesn't matter. Understanding energy, understanding how it flows, understanding how it impacts you, and understanding how to control and manipulate it, no matter how you slice it, is going to make it easier for you to deal with things on a day-to-day basis. Because if nothing else, it helps you know yourself, helps you know your value in a situation, and it helps you ask that question, who am I? Right? Who am I? What's my energy when this happens? What's my energy when that happens? Because what is that emotive self at the end of the day? Energy. Feelings are energy. Thoughts are energy. So it all comes down to energy. And with that, I'll leave you for today. Thanks again for spending some time with me. This has been Raven Insight. I'm Lions. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you here next time. Bye now.